Take a person, take a story, take you on a journey. It's your take.
On today's Your Take, I talk to a Welsh musician with a rock and roll spirit and a rockabilly pedigree. My guest has been playing on the UK music scene for several years. The first band he fronted was the rockabilly group the Rimshots, who won a Country Music Award for Best UK Album, and the band gained television and radio exposure. He's gone on to perform with the great British guitarist Darrel Higham in the rockabilly band Johnny Bach and the Moonshine Boozers. He also plays in other musical hats as a solo musician in the John Lewis Trio and in his German export, the John Lewis German Trio. My guest has performed with the popular mainstream singer Imelda May. They have collaborated both on stage and in the studio, and Imelda remains a supporter and champion of his music. On today's Your Take, I talked to John Lewis about his life as a professional musician. We discussed John's Welsh roots, his rockabilly and guitar influences, performing for years on the music circuit, the bands John currently works in, and the recordings he has released to date. Good afternoon, John. Thanks for being a guest today on Your Take.
Thanks for having me. Nice to meet you properly.
I'm liking the iconography for starters, the shirt, the guitars in the background and the CD albums. I'm looking forward to talking to you about your musical journey, all the things you've done, the various bands and collaborations.
Mm-hmm.
Let's begin though by starting at the very beginning. You were born in Wales. Can you tell me which part you grew up in and what year you were born? And can you just give us some background as well on your parents and just tell me who they are, what they did for a living, and do you have any siblings?
Okay, let's see. We're starting at the beginning then. Well, I was born in 1969 in Penarth, Cardiff St David's Hospital, where most of the people were born if they weren't born at home. I then lived most of my life in Penarth, little sleepy seaside Victorian town, very beautiful. One of the top places to live in Wales, apparently, in the polls every year. And God's waiting room, we used to call it as kids, because it's all changed now because the schools are so good. And so there's lots of young families here. It's quite a thriving little place, buzzing little place now. But so I was born here with my mum and dad. My mum was from here. My dad was actually born in America and was brought back at the age of 4. His mum disappeared when he was 4 years old, which they found her in later. That's another long story. But he worked for British Dredging, but was also an escapologist and a magician.
Oh wow!
So he was in the entertainment business, and the London Palladium historian got in touch. They did a book, and he was the only other escapologist apart from Houdini, apparently, on the London Palladium. But and my mum was local. Really, she'd done a few little jobs. My uncle had a taxi business, so she used to help out with that, even doing the odd taxi driving thing if they were stuck. But it was just mainly my mum and housewife, really, in those days, looking after the old aunties and different things.
I wanted to come on to your schooling. You've given us a portrait of where you live, where you grew up, and your parents, of course, and fascinating your dad's background in particular. I want to talk about schooling and where did you go to school and how would you describe your time there? And was music taught at your school? And if so, were you interested in music at that stage?
Well, the first school was Albert Road, which was, I probably wasn't the best. I was a bit mischievous and I got quite bored easily. And if it wasn't interesting or I wasn't interested, then I wasn't much use or very helpful, let's put it that way. But my mum loved piano. She never played. Well, she played a little bit. And then she got my brother piano lessons. And then in the junior school, they were doing violin lessons. And I really wanted to play violin for some reason. Before I knew it, you could play hillbilly and fiddle music on it. I don't know why, but because I played piano, they let someone else do it, which is fair enough. And then I went on to Stanwell Comprehensive, which is it's a big school now, which I think they ploughed a lot of money in after my year left. After the results, maybe, I don't know. But I was doing, it was a big comp, and had my ups and downs. I think I got removed from about 3 lessons, one of my own choice. And I was actually doing music at the time, and I'd got grade 4 piano. And they were doing music lessons, but the music lessons seemed to me more music history.
Sure.
So I didn't really care what Beethoven had for breakfast, so that didn't go to
the more kind of theory side as opposed to the...
No, it wasn't theory. It was all about classical composers. The teacher liked to, and it's like, well, I want to learn music, and when can we go on there was a double bass piano, and so when can we use any of these? It's like, oh no. Well, what are they for then? But now it's all changed. The schools, I see my son, and they got full-on recording studios, and they lend them PAs, and they get all their equipment, and it's a whole different world now.
Moving on from your education to your early experiences of music and playing, and you've touched upon them kind of briefly so far, but what age did you start playing instruments, and what instruments were you playing, and what type of music? And I also wanted to ask, did you come from a musical family, and what sort of music was being played in the household from a young age?
Yeah, well, started, I don't know, 9 or 10 on piano. As I say, I got to grade 4, and then there was a written theory test, which I was not really interested in. I'd got bored by then, and then I bought a guitar, so the piano just went out the window. Then I just got the guitar, because I can read music and things, but I don't really use it on guitar, but I still, when I play piano, I do sometimes, you know. I do write things out sometimes, but there was always a piano in our house as a kid. So my mum played a few things, but not much. She didn't really. My dad never played anything. He always liked singing, especially when he had a cold. He always liked the deep voice. And he had all sorts. He wasn't really into rock and roll. I remember watching Rock Around the Clock with my mum. She liked it a bit more, you know. But my dad, he'd have the latest Gilbert and Sullivan album on or something. But he did buy the Johnny Cash Falls from Prison album, which I thought, quite liked a lot of that.
You did have some good taste after all, yeah?
Yeah, Sorry, what was the other part of that question? There's the 3-barrel. Did I get them all in?
Yeah, I kind of want to move on next to location, and specifically pick up on the Welsh rock music scene, particularly we're looking at sort of the 1970s, the likes of people like Dave Edmunds and Micky Gee. Would you say those Welsh musicians were a big influence on yourself? And secondly, I wanted to ask how you fell in love with the 1950s rockabilly music scene and also its resurgence.
Well, in Penarth, there was a big rock and roll scene anyhow, because Paul Barrett, Legacy Barrett, was the rock and roll agent. So there was lots of different bands from here. And of course, Shakin' Stevens, the Sunsets, they're all the ones that are left are still around Penarth. I see them quite often. Some of the guys are still around and that. But as for the Welsh scene didn't really play a part in my life until it was more the Welsh pub scene, because every pub seemed to have bands, you know, and there was lots of great places, and there was the Red Hot. So in the 80s then, when I started getting out, and I'd go see, say, the Red Hot Pokers, and then Micky Gee would be playing in local pubs after touring with Shaky, you know, and he was still in the charts at the time. But all these guys still played the local pubs for fun under different names, different bands. And Micky used to play with Tommy Riley and do it's like a rockabilly trio. They did do an album with Lincoln Carr on bass, I forgot what it's called now. Anyhow, but there was some great rockabilly bands and rock and roll bands and rhythm and blues bands, and Snatch It Backward around. There was Titch Squillum, the rock guitarist. And every night you could find something to watch one of these bands, you know. but actually, when I was younger in the 70s, I didn't really know about any of those things. I got into the rockabilly via the revival through a friend in school, Dean Milton. His sister was going out with the local Teddy boy crowd, you know, and then he got into it a bit, got me into it, and then he moved on, but I got stuck with it. Not stuck with it, I love it. And so they had the Stray Cats and the revival with the Matchbox and Polecats and then Restless. And then I heard some of the records like Gene Vincent and Eddie Cochran, they were trying to copy. And then I went back further and sold all my modern albums and started buying all the 50s recordings. And a lot of it I fell in love with the guitar in, you know. And for a while I lived next door to Paul Barrett, which was quite funny. So as a kid, you know, he'd have the Weymouth Weekenders and he'd sort of, John, bring your Sleepy LaBeef album in next door. And there'd be Sleepy LaBeef in the front room, or some of the Comets, or, you know, Johnny Powers, or so I met quite a few different people. And because he used to get so many records and he worked for Magnum Force, he used to just give me all these records too of modern bands.
I think the interesting thing, you've kind of hit the nail on the head, is you discover something that you have a love for, that, you know, in terms of music, and you trace it back to the roots from the rockabilly revival to the originators of that music, and then you trace it back even further to the influence of country and blues, and go back even further. That's what it's like a chain, isn't it?
I ended up going through a massive hillbilly route. In fact, Hank Williams is one of my big heroes. And then I went on the big blues route, and even back to the jazz, to Charlie Christian, thinking, so if you hear that live at Minton's album, I don't know if you hear that, Charlie Christian and Dizzy Gillespie and Thelonious Monk. But Charlie Christian, the guitarist on the Rimshots, I played it to him, and it's like, every one of those riffs is a separate rock and roll song. You know, incredible.
Yeah, Charlie Christian was an incredible guitarist. It's been interesting so far because we've established from a young age your love of music and being able to play competently from a young age, and your discovery of all these different musical.
I wouldn't say forms. I was competent at a young age, but I drum a lot and annoy people. But it's later life I learned to play guitar more.
I wanted to ask, how did you make the transition to becoming a professional musician? When did it roughly happen? And can you tell us about what the music scene was like when you first encountered it and were performing on the live musical scene?
Well, after school, I went to college and became an electronic engineer, sitting guilds, part 1, 2, and 3. Then I worked for Sony for 3 years, down in Bridgend, fixing whatever electronic machinery needed fixing, and even on the tellies and the boards coming down the lines. And I did that for, I think, about 3 years. And I was also playing with the Rimshots at the time. So that, of course, meant a lot of late nights, and I was on shift work and I was missing. So I ended up on my 3rd written warning for attendance and timekeeping. And then my boss changed. So I was back to square one. Oh. So when I got to my 3rd written warning again, I'd saved up some money and I went to America for a month and quit my job. And the plan was, when I come back then, I'm just going to play music and take it seriously, which I did. But I quit my job and went to America and come back a month later, with not much money left. And I survived for the next 5 years. I'd put it that way. I didn't really take the music seriously. I was living in a flat over in Cardiff and just having fun, really. I didn't really worry about anything. I just enjoyed myself.
Timely moment in the interview where you said you spent some time in America, and your decision when coming back to the UK was to become a professional musician, and that you've kind of never looked back since. But I wanted
it was a big step because it was a good job at Sony for my age, you know, and I was on shift work and making good money. But I thought I could always go back to that if I want. But it must be something like 35 years later, I haven't gone back. Not 35. No, anyhow, 25.
I want to talk about some of the early bands you performed in. And can you share with us the story how the Welsh rockabilly band, the Rimshots, how were they formed and how did you meet the other band members?
Okay, well, First band I was in was actually the Questionnaires with Ray Thompson playing guitar. He showed me a fair bit of stuff. And then he used to play with Malcolm Clint, the old Gene Vincent sort of guy at Rock and Roller. And he got me playing rhythm guitar with those guys. There's Ray and Dick from Demented I Go was on guitar. Billy, the drummer I still use now, he's in my band. But so I started playing then, and then Alan Mayers used to organise these buses up to Birmingham, the old days, to see Ronnie Dawson, Joe Clay, whoever was playing, you know. They were a few times a year, and we'd always go up there on the bus. And they were in a band, but they were about getting a new band together. So I knew Alan from the thing. So they had another singer called Paul Berman. And then they got me into play guitar and realised I could only do so many songs. And then Alan got Rob Ned in from his old band, the Busboys. So then we had two singers. It was Paul Berman, myself, Alan Mayers. Mark Kemlow was only playing pots and pans, but at that time he just got his first drum kit then when I joined. And we became the Rimshots as a five-piece. And I used to play a bit of guitar when Paul was singing, but Rob played most of the guitar. He was great. He could work out anything in the right style and had such an authentic sound, you know.
I want to talk about the band, the Rimshots, because you had quite a lot of success. You recorded several albums fronting the Rimshots. The band performed around the world. You won a British Country Music Award for Album of the Year, and you gained television and radio exposure. How do you look back at your time in the band, and what for you have been the highlights, and how often do you perform with the band today?
Well, no, it was great times with the Rimshots. We all had a right laugh, you know, and we were young, and we'd do the Scandinavian tours and go off for a month at a time and things, and then go through Europe on different tours. We went all over the shop. The poor old vans we used to have got killed. We left one in Sweden once. But yeah, there's highlights. That, well, winning the award was a highlight for the thing. But also with the Rimshots, because we were very authentic and we could play. We had a good team. We were a good team together. We had the job of and Paul Barrett realised, you know, we could back some of the original artists. So I think the first person we backed was Matt Curtis. And we flew to Switzerland to do that with him, which was brilliant, and a massive festival. No, in France, in Lyon, sorry. And we went on, we've done quite a few gigs over the years with Matt Curtis, even recorded an LP with him in the end. So it was, you know, all of a sudden I'm working with my heroes, the ones, one month I'm buying the record, next thing I'm playing with the guy. And then, you know, we've done so many, Merrily Moore, Wanda Jackson. It just went, we became the Hemsby House Band at a while. So we back, you know, Glenn, Navel Feltz, the list goes on and on, really. It's quite, so I was very lucky to meet a lot of my idols in a way.
The endless list of people you've performed with in the Rimshots and as a solo artist, and shortly we'll talk about some of the other names, some of which I mentioned in the intro. But I wanted to ask you, how was rockabilly music perceived outside of the UK, particularly in Europe, when you would tour back in those days? Were the audiences very different? Was there more of an appreciation?
More of a music crowd, full stop, in the world. I think, you know, in Britain, you know, there's, like I say, Cardiff, every pub had music. It was on the thing, and the place would pack out. When it's a different, the generation now is different, I think. But and when we were on tour, we were playing in specialist clubs and festivals for rock and roll. I guess we'd fit in the odd different thing, but mainly the people were there for us and the rockabilly and things. So it was obviously received very well because that's what everyone was there for. I'm sure there was other fractions in different places, and we could have played the wrong club and it would have been so good. But we were always lucky. And we were quite a fun band too, because we put the skiffle in and different things. Because when we started, you know, we weren't known on the rockabilly scene, so we used to play anywhere we could, including we had a full set of classic rock and roll, so we could do all the Valley social clubs, which were just as hard as the northern ones apparently. So you know, if you didn't know what Mrs. Jones wanted you to play, then you're in trouble because her husband was on the committee.
Could it be
So
quite hot?
we get our teeth in all those clubs. So when we got an awkward crowd, we could switch to, right, we'll just entertain you. You're going to like it whether you like the music or not.
I see. Yeah. Could it be quite hostile at times, depending on the crowd and the venue?
Well, yeah, you have some places, you know, but not because we grew up in the pubs and clubs, you know. And I Sam's Bar, you know, those clubs where the crowd are that close to your face and they're drunk as hell and they're falling everywhere, and it's like, yeah, it takes a lot. It took a lot to annoy us or shock us. I think we annoyed more crowds than crowds annoyed us.
You've already spoken about some of the musicians you've been lucky to work with and record with and tour with as well. I want to move on to somebody who I must say I'm a huge admirer of, and I've seen him on live on a number of occasions, and that's the guitarist Darrel Higham.
Yeah, good old Darrel.
How did you meet Darrel, and what made you decide to work together and form the rockabilly band Johnny Bach and the Moonshine Boozers?
Well, it's my girlfriend at the time was from London, who was actually my wife now. We're still together, but her best friend, Darrel, was going out with at the time, and they were going out. And I knew of Darrel, he knew of me because we'd done some records. He hadn't done so much then, actually. And she said, well, I'm off out with Mandy. Do you want to go around Darrel's for the night? So I went round Darrel's in his flat in London, and then he's so productive, you know, that man can't stop. He's always focused and doing things where it takes me ages to finish things. He'll finish it and nail it in days. So he's there already with this little Amstrad 4-track recorder set up with guitars and microphones. It's like, let's have a jam. So we started mucking around, and we were laughing about different bands that they say they write a new song, but it's just another Gene Vincent song with different words, or, you know. And it was, so we started mucking around. I said, right, you play that song and I'm going to sing the words for this song. So it was a total joke, even to the stage of, right, the one was Bebop a Lula, but we did it Charlie Feather style, and I sang the words back to front, so it was Lula Bop B. And it was a total joke, really. So we'd done a few of these songs and messed up. But Darrel had recorded it and mixed it and put some drums on there. And he played it to this guy who had a record label, Gator Records, and they put it out as a 10-inch album. Next thing you know, we got Ricky Lee Braun in from the Stargazers, and he came down to Wales, and we recorded another 6 songs. So the first 2 times I met Darrel properly, we actually recorded. And then we had to have a name. And he said, no, call it your name. And Johnny Bach was my nickname in school. And I think the record label put the Moonshine Boozers on it. Johnny Bach is like, Bach in Welsh is little. So it's like Little John. So that's how, and then that record then had the Mill on there, which became a dance floor hit around Europe on the rock and roll scene, scene. So, and that was it, really. And we've been good mates ever since. We keep in touch, and we still do about 3 or 4 gigs a year. The same as the Rimshots, we do 3 or 4 gigs a year. I didn't answer that earlier. But we just keep it for festivals and bigger gigs, you know. So, yeah, we keep in touch and we annoy each other quite often. And yeah, good guy, Darrel, but very talented and so focused with his. I wish I had that, the way you can finish a project where mine will be. I've got songs on my recording machine from 6 months ago.
He's an incredible guitarist that has obviously brought this huge Eddie Cochran influence to the UK and European masses, and obviously given his own take on it as well. But in terms of your working together creatively, musically, what do you think it is that kind of brought the best in one another when you work together in terms of musical chemistry? What was it like working? And
obviously with Darrel and the Bach thing, because I'm singing, I just play the rhythm. So literally all the albums I've turned up with songs and the words maybe, or if I know the words and the chords, and I'll say, right, I want to do it to this style. And then So I played in bands too, and when you're not fronting the band, so for Daryl, when he's not fronting the band, he can step back and really get into the guitar, you know, which he loves doing. So he was getting more excited, which was pushing me. We just sort of gelled with it. I don't know. It was always a very powerful sound on it, and it was always fun and we didn't take it seriously at all. And I'd literally turn up. The last album, I turned up with the songs. We went in the studio. He played bass, the drummer and me. I kept the rhythm, sang live. Then he overdubbed the guitar on, and the album was done in a day.
Do you find when you work with Daryl, is there a lot of rehearsal, or is it pretty much just an improvised process? And
no, we've never rehearsed.
No, you just do
we
it,
just
basically.
As I said, I pick the songs. There might be a few takes. If we don't get it in the fourth, if it's not working by the fourth, when it's not working, so we go on to the next song. And
interesting.
And because he puts the guitar on after twice, he's always got a chance to. But all the bass, drums, and vocals and everything else is live. And he wants to get a bass player in so he can just do the guitar live too, in all fairness. But it's the way it worked out in the studio, and that's how we've always done it. So Daryl plays the bass. He chucks some songs in the mix too, you know. He actually chucked the Eddie Cochran one, Summertime Blues, which we mixed up to a whole different rhythm. And I didn't think he'd let us do that.
I want to talk about somebody else that you've worked with on a number of occasions, and also been a great champion of your work, and that's Imelda May. What's it been like receiving high praise and endorsement from such a high-profile musician? And can you discuss how you met her and talk about the occasions you've worked together?
Well, really, it was I met her through Darrel Higham, of course, you know, because they were together, and I used to stay at their place up in London. So I'd be off on a Johnny Bach gig with Daryl at the Ace Cafe or something. Then I'd stay at his, and Imelda would be there coming back from her gig, and I got to know her through that, really. And then when they started getting bigger, they started using me to do the opening on their solo tours, which was great fun. I used to love doing that. Different crowds. Some of them were tin hats on, but others. I think my favourite was Brecon Theatre, because it was one of those. It was full, and you could hear a pin drop, and everyone was listening to everything I'd done and said. And then I turned around, and Imelda and all the band were standing at the side watching me. I thought, hang on, this is going a bit too well. And then when I wrote the song "Waltz Around the Kitchen" for my daughter, I asked her if she would. There's my in-laws are from Ardrar in Donegal, and there's some great Irish singers out there. But for me to get out there and record, and I wanted an Irish voice singing the harmony on it. And Imelda said she would do it, which was beautiful. But then, of course, her and Daryl went separate ways. And to be honest, I haven't seen her since. It was only through the connection of Daryl I met Imelda, but she was always lovely, really helpful, and a typical beautiful Irish person. You know, she just always.
You're a busy musician, and I wanted to ask how you juggle so many projects, because you're a solo musician. You're in the John Lewis German trio, the John Lewis Trio, the Rimshots, and Johnny Bach and the Moonshine Boozers. How do you juggle so many musical projects?
Well, I manage myself at the start, so that's, you know, I know what I'm doing. The Johnny Bach and the Rimshots, their festivals. If we do 3 or 4 a year, each band, that's that. And we're all in different bands, so that takes a fair bit of juggling. They got to book fair way in advance to do that. Solo is, you know, I play a lot more local places with the solo, but I do festivals too. It's going quite well, the solo. I enjoy that because I can just do what I go more rootsy. Then I can go between the country, blues, rock and roll, jazz, mainly my own songs. I really like doing my own songs. And the trio again, if they fit in. And the German trio is not really. They're good friends of mine. I've known them for a long time. Andre is the bass player from Boss Hoss out there, the big band. And Mario is an old friend from touring way back with the Rimshot days, and from Dresden. But well, they're good musicians, so he wanted me out for some parties, so they just fly me out. It's cheaper for them, and they said they put a band together. So, and I do this in different places. So I got guys I use in Italy, in Australia, even Portugal. There's different. So I'll use a pickup band sometimes if it's just because I play the lead in my own trio and sing. Mostly I just need a bass and drums. Although in my trio I do like people get mixed up because it's me and the trio, because I got Stuart McElroy on piano, who's just a great piano player. He's on the last few Van Morrison albums. I was touring with him, and so I'm lucky to keep him with me. But he likes. We always have fun, you know. There's no point working with arseholes because it makes life hell on the road. So I always work with happy people if I can, and if just because they're a good musician, don't want to say I want them in my band.
Do you spend a lot of time in Germany? And again, I wanted to ask you about the rockabilly scene today in Germany, in that country, and how is it perceived by the audiences and the venues you play?
Well, again, you know, I did the Waldorf Festival, which is a few thousand people, and it's the first festival they had that was available because of COVID. So it was just jam-packed with all these happy people. I got to warn you, there's a delivery van pulled up and the dog is going to go crazy any second. But that's
get ready for it.
That's the life, unless he knocks. It might not happen, but yes. But again, you know, I got to play specialist places that have asked me to come, and people come to see me. So I guess probably in Big Ed, some of these are small places. You know, I played shitholes all over the world. They're not all grand venues and things, but it's good fun, and it's people who love music usually. You know, they're really die hard for this style of music.
Yeah, and I guess
then you get the general public mixed in sometimes, and in Europe, I think they got a more general love of music. It's not like, oh, it's not my music. It's like, well, I'll have a listen first and see if I like it. Do you know what I mean? Not just
yeah, and you said about playing different types of venues from small to bigger venues, but I guess that's the whole point of the journey. It's different experiences, playing to different kinds of audiences, and you learn from that experience as well, don't you?
Love a small place with a crowd in your face, you know.
Yeah.
When you're on a stage and the barrier's about 10 meters away, and then especially I can't even see the crowd without my glasses. But if I put my glasses on, I can't see the guitar, so I always say it's better to see the guitar.
It was interesting because earlier on in our conversation, this interview, you spoke about a turning point in your life where you had a decent job at a young age. Here the dog goes. And basically you were saying that you went to America and then came back and you decided you were going to be a musician. But I wanted to ask you, how difficult is it to make a living in the music profession? And what challenges and obstacles do you think there are in today's music industry, particularly when it's hard to make money from recordings? And what for you is the most lucrative area for you personally as a musician? Okay, well,
I sort of decided to be a musician before I gave up and went to work and came to America. But as I say, I just messed around for quite a few years, and then the rest of the Rimshots weren't jumping in full time, so I was just doing everything for the same money as everyone else, and then I started the trio and got out doing that, and then I started doing some solo work. But yet it's still quite difficult. It's very up and down, you know. I'm quite known on the scene, so I'm lucky. I don't rarely ring people for gigs. I usually get contacted, and so you know, the Rimshot ones of Johnny Bach are well paid. One of the, I suppose, the most lucrative, and the thing that keeps me ticking over is the solo gigs. Because a lot of places I found, you know, if you're a 10-piece orchestra or a solo show, they'll say, well, we only pay £350, £400, but they'll pay the same if you're solo or if you're 20 of you. So I can go do these smaller places solo, and you know, some local ones, I I haven't got to leave the house till 7. I'm home by 12. So I quite enjoy them, especially after lockdown when they said, I think my first gig was up in Newcastle, so I had to load the van, drive 5 hours, do the gig, unload, drive back 5. I thought, crikey, I was quite happy in my kitchen every Sunday for an hour. But yeah, and because I got a lot of strings in my bow, as whatever they say, then yeah, I can skip between the trio, the solo. So it keeps life interesting.
Yeah.
And then with the Rimshots and Daryl, they're busy doing their own thing. So we have a good laugh when we get together. But I don't think the Rimshots could go in a van for a month together anymore. We'd kill each other probably. But
as you say, many strings to your bow, and we've established...
Yeah, so and the recordings, you get your trickle in from the PRS or the MCPS and different record releases. So it's everything together makes it work. And I do some I've done some different session work for different people, from Van Morrison to High Contrast, the drum and bass DJ.
You've done many different things, and yeah, we mentioned many strings to your bow.
It's all musical,
Several bands, performing as a solo artist, recording several albums. Do you have a favourite band you've performed in or a recorded project? And if so, why? And what are your future musical plans?
I wouldn't say I got a favourite. I've enjoyed all the things I've done really with different people. This was a highlight. Well, again, winning the award, but the Hank Williams tribute was really very self-indulgent, I thought. When you can go buy a Hank album, who wants to buy a tribute album? I can never work tribute albums out, but we joined the crew and won the award. But working with Matt Curtis, to record an album with one of the legendary Texas Rockabillys from the 50s was just incredible, I thought. A highlight, El Toro Records did a double LP, but it's on CD and LP, 50 songs of 33 years of John Lewis, which was quite, made me feel a bit old, but it was quite, yeah, that's a nice thing. I've done something with my life. And I've got quite a few projects on the go now, well, mainly with the trio. I've got about 6 trio songs I want to finish recording. Some are actually finished. I did a lockdown project with we all recorded separate places and sent it through the internet. And then Deke Dickerson's on there from and Nick from the Drugstore Cowboys. And I've got those songs and I want to put them out as a series of singles. It's just the pressing plants are so busy. It's like an 8-month waiting list for records and things. But so some guy in Wales was meant to do it and then it all went wrong. So now I'm back at the beginning of the 8-month waiting list, which I haven't even joined yet because I got a bit disillusioned with it all. But like I said, Daryl can nail a project and finish it, but mine will go on for years before I'm happy.
Next, I wanted to ask you, what area of the music business excites you the most? And are there any aspects of being a professional musician that you find frustrating at all?
I think the most exciting bit, obviously, is that hour on stage. When you get to a festival and you got your thing and they're there and people are shouting for your songs that you've written, is such a buzz for me. And yeah, that's just such a great feeling. But then I suppose the annoying bit is then for your 1 hour on stage, you could, if you're playing somewhere, you've left the day early to sit at airports and sit in vans and then some dodgy hotel probably and then you do it in reverse. So for that 1 hour, you can take 2 days, 3 days even sometimes. And that could be I do like traveling, but sometimes it's a drag. I did a solo tour. I booked them from Land's End to John O'Groats and back, just for a bit of fun, really. And that I was in the van on my own, and I just loved. I'd leave early, stop at towns on the way. Places I've heard the name of that town, never been there. Right, I got a few hours. Go read my book by the side of Loch Lomond, or it was a great little trip. And I do like my own company. I love traveling with the band too. It's a laugh, but sometimes the traveling's a chore, and
yeah,
and sometimes when I used to chase for bookings, and then you'd find that you'd get in with the promoter, and then next year it's all changed again. So they want the whole new thing, and I can't be bothered with all that side and paperwork and all that.
Being your own free agent as well, are there ever times where you're having to constantly chase for money from the promoter and money you owe from gigs and so on that you haven't been paid? Is that kind of something that
No, never had a problem with that.
No,
never. Most of the scene I'm on, a lot of the times there's not even contracts. It's usually cash on the night, or it's straight in your bank account before you go to the festival. So no, never had a problem with that. Chasing the money.
John, I've got one final question, and then we move on to the quick fire questions that we ask all the Your Take guests. The same questions we ask every single guest, and we always get some interesting responses. Firstly, I wanted to ask you, we've spoken and traced your roots and all your musical influences and how you've gone back from rockabilly to 50s rock and roll to blues to jazz and so on. But I'm also aware that you're a huge fan of some of the great finger pickers that hail from Nashville and the USA, people like Merle Travis, and you've tried yourself to kind of replicate that style. What is it about those guitarists that have really sort of inspired you and wanted to kind of play that kind of sophisticated way?
I've always loved the guitar, and then I hear someone lent me the Merle Travis Walk the Strings album, and I was just like, whoa, what the hell is this? You know, that was just blew my mind. How someone could, and there was some corny, the problem with Chet and Merle, in our day and age, there's some quite corny tunes mixed in, to be honest. But I ended up learning them all, from Bicycle Built to Two to, guitars are obviously another weakness of mine. You know, I like all the different things. But the Travis picking, I think I first got into with, I got a thumb pick, Mississippi John Hurt. So when he was doing all that, because he had the thumb going. So it's a finger picking style, and I think that's what got me. And Mississippi John Hurt was good to start with, because I found he'd play the riff, which was the melody of the tune, and he'd use that for the lead break in every verse. So once you got the one, you got it almost, you know, whichever one it was. And but then I got into the Travis thing. Which is all when I was with the Rimshots, basically I ended up, the other singer left the band and I was just mainly singer, so I sort of stopped playing guitar on stage, maybe one or two songs, and left it to Rob, because I was the one pulling faces and being the front man, you know, so doing that malarkey. And but then I got the Mel Bay, Merle Travis book. So at home I'd just sit in the bedroom and I'd start learning all these different tunes and all that. Just I went and I just worked my way through the book, and then I actually got to the end of that book, and then they released another one which was twice as thick, so I didn't get to the end of that one, but I just loved the way they could do the rhythm, the bass notes, and then the rhythm, and then just pick up whatever melody. So it just really, which then of course when I went solo, because I can finger pick, so you got the bass rhythm and the lead, and then I got a stomping box. It really fills out the sound. So I know I played in Bristol, and they were like, "Crikey, I can't believe I thought there's a whole band playing when because I can make a lot of noise on my own. It's quite surprises people."
I wanted to ask you, because I play guitar myself very basically. I taught myself over lockdown, and it's a hard chore just to get used to playing open chords and then playing scales and bar chords, and then there's so many other techniques like slide and so on. But how long did it take you to kind of learn that finger picking style? Because to me it sounds so hard and sophisticated to play. Was it a chore, or did it come naturally?
Well, as I said, I went through this book and I'd done lots of the Mississippi John Hurt tunes from another blues book, so I learned it by tablature and music and listening to the records. And What was one? One of the first was Stagger Lee. That was the one. And I just sat there for night, and I was living at the drummer's house at one point, and I thought his wife was going to kill me at one point. But because I just played the same. A lot of it you got to play over and over and over and over to get the. Well, I did. Maybe some people don't have to do that, but so I just, as I said, I just kept doing it, and so all the way through the Rimshots, I was just practicing in my bedroom with this Travis picking, and then I don't think even they knew till I picked up the guitar one thing and just started doing all other tunes, and then where'd you learn that? So, and then the more you do it, the more the chords become easier. The thumb becomes natural to me now, though, when you're doing, I don't think about that, I'm more on the melody. And you never stop learning.
Yeah, and it's like anything, isn't it? The more you practice and you dedicate yourself to something, I guess the better you become at it. It becomes more familiar, doesn't it? And
then you play another record with another guy who's worked out to do it all totally different. In fact, that Cannonball Rag, I used to, as I said earlier, used to go on Micky Gee's, who was a great influence and a help. And when I got to a certain stage, I went round there the one time, and he said, "What are you playing then?" Probably the first time I went round with a guitar, the Bigsby copy I had. And I must have played for 2 hours. And he took the guitar up at one point and said, "What's that?" And I played this. It was a Chet Atkins roll, that where it goes down the thing. He said, "Oh, that's nice. What's that?" And I showed him. And I left there thinking, hang on, I've played for 2 hours. He's pinched my best riff and shown me nothing. That's true. And then I went back a month later, and he was ready for me. He almost remembered everything I played. And he said, "Right, well, you got the technique, you got the style. Why didn't you learn to play it here? Well, learn it up in this position and this position." And he just started playing everything I played in different positions. And I was like, and every time I went around after, we never touched the guitar because he just gave me a lifetime work. Because if you play that riff in a different position, you get a whole new sound and a whole new feel. Sometimes, and it just opened up my playing phenomenally.
Yeah, I love Micky Gee. I thought he's a phenomenal guitarist, and very, very sad he's no longer with us.
Yeah, it was very sad when that happened. Because that one time I was around here and we were jamming Cannonball Rag, and I was putting on my best riffs and thinking, give him a run for his money. And then I went to see him play in the night in a club. There's only a little pub in in Cardiff City Road, because he loved that. He wouldn't put his name on the band. He just loved playing so people don't know who he was. But people in Cardiff did say they still went, but didn't nag him and bug him. And he said, "We're going to do Cannonball Rag." And he played it like we did in his bedroom earlier that day. Then he winked at me, and it was like he almost played it back to front. I was like, whoa, you didn't show me any of that.
My final question before we...
Yeah, sorry, I'm going on with that.
No problem. They're interesting, fascinating stories. Outside of your music career, you have a family, and I wanted to ask what their impressions are of your music and your work, and what are your hobbies and interests away from music?
Well, the family have always been very supportive. My wife's very supportive. She met me as a musician and has never moaned as long as I can bring in my share of the bills, I guess. I know it works well together, very supportive. The kids are getting older now, but they like the fact that dad's an old rock and roller, but not too enthusiastic with it.
How old are your kids?
This year they'll be 18 and 21.
Oh wow.
But
grow up quickly.
Then my mum and dad are still around. My dad was always encouraging, and my mum was always encouraging, even though it was still, he hasn't got a job. It's like, no, music is a job. That was my mum. But I think when we done the Van Morrison recording sessions, they realised I was a bit more serious than just a drunk musician.
John, we come on to that moment. We ask all your take guests these final 13 questions just to kind of ease and finish the interview, and maybe find out things about you that we weren't aware of and didn't know about you until now. Things you like, maybe things you're not so keen on. You don't have to think about these in any detail, but here we go. John Lewis, number one. what is your favourite pastime?
Favorite pastime? Well, because I travel so much, I like actually being home and going at the pub with a few pints with the boys, and I play Skittles. I'm on a Skittles team, which is just good fun and takes your mind away from everything.
Yeah, I can imagine. Something we haven't spoken about
And
tonight.
and fiddling with instruments. I think I'd like to have been a luthier or something. I've made a guitar, and they're my pastimes.
One thing we haven't spoken about in this interview is films, cinema. What is your favourite film and why?
No, I don't know. I'm a bit like Billy Connolly with a book. I only need one film, and I've forgotten the beginning by the time it gets to the end. But I always like The Shawshank Redemption, just because it's a classic film. I know he was put in wrongly accused, and then turned it around and ripped off the ones who should have been in there, and got out and had a nice life.
It is a very fine
What's
film.
there not to love about that?
Good book as well from Stephen King. We move on to novels now. Who would you cite as your favourite novelist?
Well, I don't really read novels. I'm more of a biography and autobiography man. That's what I like to read. In lockdown, my friend gave me it's a book on the Beatles. I'm not really into the Beatles, but it was like that. I thought, I'm never going to read all that. I don't even like them. And it's up to their first hit, and it's all about life in the 50s, being a musician, or trying to be. And it's brilliant. So yeah, no novels for me, sorry.
Move from biographies now to choosing what you would have done if you could have had a different profession. What would it have been if not a musician?
I think I'd have been to be a guitar luthier, making guitars. I put together an acoustic before now and put a few guitars together and always twiddling with them. And yeah, that would have been nice. Something with wood, and working with wood.
John, who would you say has been your greatest inspiration in life?
In life? What, musically or?
It could be musically, or it could be personally. It could be maybe a family member, you know.
Oh, that's a hard one. I mean, Merle Travis for guitar, Hank Williams for the singing and the words and vocals and things. My wife's inspiration because she pushes me to make sure I'm not just sitting there.
We'll talk about newspapers next. Do you read a newspaper? And if so, which one?
Not for a long time. They're just full of hate and they cause trouble. And I don't even watch it on the telly now. I'll catch it on the radio by accident. But they seem to be worried about all the wrong things and just installing fear and hate. And I just can't stand it.
Do you know what, John? We share the same. I could totally agree with you there. Yeah, you kind of hit the nail on the head for me.
It's all biased. It's not independent anymore, is it? So they're the puppets for the rich people above, I believe. Anyhow.
Next, I wanted to ask you, what is your favorite food?
Favorite food? Well, I did mention this. I do. If it's a choice of a takeaway, it's got to be a Chinese meal. But when I do go to I always think I'm going to have something different, and then I see a nice ribeye steak on the menu, and it's, sorry, vegetarians, it's a ribeye steak every time with a peppercorn sauce and tiramisu. Yeah. Tiramisu, I'll search the world for them.
We ask all our guests to choose a favorite cultural icon. It stumps a lot of guests, but it could be a figure from history, could be somebody who's changed the world in a particular way. It could be maybe a religious leader. Who would you choose as your favorite cultural icon?
I don't really know. There's so many people done so many great things in my sort of world. I suppose Woody Guthrie was always one who stuck out to me because he wrote songs about the shit that's happening in the world, and actually didn't probably ruined his career because of it. You know, he didn't get many gigs when he was going, if you saw later life and things, where he could have easily done nicer stuff. And you know, he had his hate fascist guitar badge, and I think he'd done a lot for the music scene then, you know, made people realize, like Bob Dylan and them, and you know, you can actually make a point.
Interesting choice, a really interesting choice. And like you say, somebody who went on to influence probably the most famous singer-songwriter of all time, perhaps, in Bob Dylan, who was always cited, Woody Guthrie, as kind of the man that got him into music and writing songs.
but a man who just lived his life happy, and he probably could have made money, but he was a hobo half the time, you know.
Next, I'm going to ask you what your favorite curse word is and why.
Oh, bollocks. Just makes me laugh. And you can use it in lots of applications, can't you?
Next, we're going to talk about travel, favorite places. What would you say is your favorite place or holiday destination?
Well, as I say, I travel so much. It's actually nice to be home. So I love my town, Penarth. It's a beautiful place. But my in-laws are from a place, Ardrar, up in Donegal, in Southern Ireland, but right up north. And it's just a beautiful place, small, and lots of music. And I've sort of been going there for over 20 years now, and it's home from home. So yeah, those two.
A question you never really like to ask a musician, because they obviously have so many influences, and you've mentioned some today, but who is your favorite music artist, and what would you say is your favorite album?
Oh, I don't know. As you say, there's so many. I mean, that's a tenth of the records around this house. But Hank Williams was my biggest idol. Even went to the Hank Williams Memorial Festival on my honeymoon in 2000. I met a lot of the guys just because of his songwriting and how he could simplify things in such a... And he had some great bands with him, the early pickers. And then it must be Merle Travis and Walking the Strings album. So I've given you two there, sorry.
Hank Williams is, yeah, again, a tremendous songwriter, but he lived a very tragic life and died so young. It would have been interested to see if he...
The original rock and roll star, I think, really. He was the first one to cross over in the charts and have so many hits, from the pop charts to the country charts. And then he obviously lived the wild life. And I met a lot of his early band while I was out there, and went to see Clint Holmes. And they said, you know, they always heard about the drinking times, but not when he was the sober times. And he'd be quite sober for months, but then when he had a drink, he was a binge drinker and went on it for days, you know. And then, of course, like a lot of the rock stars, they get the doctor to give him morphine for his bad back, and then the doctor only gives him so much, so they hire their own doctor. Like from Elvis to Janis to Michael Jackson, I guess they all fell fate of their own doctor, who would give them anything they want. But yeah, that's the rock and roll life, and he seemed to be the first. Died at 29, was it now?
He was young, wasn't it? Very young.
Yeah. So I've beaten him. I've done better than him.
John, what would you say is your greatest achievement to date?
Oh, crikey. It must be my family, really. We've been together for so long. The kids are great. I built an extension on the house. We got a lovely house. Yes, very happy with it all.
And then the final
question. And that's all about musically, but musically, I'm just happy. I've done so much, and that 33 years album was just a nice thing, you know, thinking, yeah, I haven't actually wasted it. I've got some good stuff there.
And then the final question, John Lewis, how do you wish to be remembered?
I don't know. I've always been quite friendly and chatty and very helpful. I hope people have noticed that and remember me for that.
Nice way and wise words to end the interview. Thanks for being a guest and sharing your musical love, your journey.
I hope I haven't put everyone to sleep with it.
All the bands you've been in over many years, some really interesting stories of some of the musicians you work with and met from history. And a lot of them are such important figures if you trace the roots of music and where it all stems from. And it's been such an interesting ride to hear what you've done, what you've achieved, and your stories as well. So thank you kindly.
Thanks for having me.
And finally, if we want to see you live, listen to your recordings, see your YouTube videos, where do we go?
I've got a website, therealjohnlewis.com. Unless you want to buy a toaster, then you can go to the other John Lewis. But that's the problem. The web guy had to put the real, because they had every .com, every greedy. That department store's greedy. Anyhow,
these corporates.
And I'm on Facebook as The Real John Lewis, where most of my gigs are advertised. They're advertised on you can get my merchandise from there. If you're into downloading, you can go on The Real John Lewis Bandcamp. They are on Spotify and then, but I've stopped putting it on there now because I think it's a total rip-off. And you can sell one album on Bandcamp, and most of the money goes to the artist, and instead of having to do 10,000 downloads for this, not even get half the money.
Wishing you all the best with all your future,
you.
with all your future endeavors, with all the different bands and groups you front. And again, thanks for today, and thanks for being on Your Take.
Thanks for having me. Take care, and I'll see you soon somewhere.
Indeed.